In response, the cowherd, who was frightened by the young boy's words of great meaning, and also perhaps by the sins he had committed, obediently obliged to Visara Sarma's request, after confirming this decision with the town's Brahmins. From that day onwards, the young and loving Visara Sarma took great care of the caring cows. According to the great circular Swamy, he fostered the cows as rain would the green crops. He dutifully led them to lush green areas, where he would also pluck grass with his own hands and feed these loving creatures, before lovingly guiding them to sources of fresh water so they can have a tasty drink to keep hydrated. He would then ensure they all had a well-shaded area to rest, before eventually guiding them back to their respective owners when the time for milking beckoned. This became a delightful daily routine for this child, and during these times, while tending to the cows, he would also collect appropriate sticks to use in the sacrificial fires conducted by the town's Brahmins. Under the young boy's watchful eye, the herd grew in numbers, and as they were well fed and looked after, they were all kept very happy. Such was the motherly love of the cows that even with the calves temporarily away from them at times at home, they adored their young caretaker as their own child and produced milk in abundance. As a result, there was plenty of milk and more than enough for the calves, the townspeople, and the Brahmins' Vedic rituals. Visara Sarma was delighted and very grateful for the cows' wonderful gift, which they continued to keep giving, even without milking. In that moment, the young boy's mind, which was always firmly fixed on achieving the shade under the Lord's lotus feet, suddenly became filled with thoughts of being able to perform the sacred bath of the Lord and perform a puja for him. Despite being in a child's body, this soul was able to think of performing the great act of puja for Lord Shiva, due to the accumulation of good deeds from past lives. Out of his love for the all-loving Lord, the young boy used the nearby sand in the dune-filled sides of the Manni river and sculpted an immaculate Sivalingam under the shade of a nearby Atti tree. Using the same source of sand, he built an amazing temple tower, complete with an external temple pathway. He energetically gathered a wonderful array of flowers, which were preserved well in a naturally sourced basket made completely of fresh leaves. As the loving cows were grazing, he went near them, and as he was about to milk them, the loving cows acknowledged his presence with sound and provided plentiful volumes of milk, which he collected in pots. He then returned with these filled pots to the place where he had built from sand the Lord's idol and temple, and consecrated these pots as per the Vedic knowledge he had learnt. And so, using the knowledge he had gained, he performed an immaculate puja, which was powered by his love for the Lord, which was indescribable and beyond his young age. By performing the Lord's sacred bath, using the fresh milk he received from the loving cows he looked after, and then by using the flowers and leaves he had collected, he repeated these offerings multiple times as his love knew no bounds, and the all-loving Lord too acknowledged his pure devotee's love for him, for he knew that Visara Sarma was not thinking of the plain sandy idol he had made, but the real Almighty Lord himself. Whatever was not physically present, which would usually be required for the puja, the young boy imagined and thought of in his mind before continuing with great enthusiasm, and so completed the puja wonderfully. Such was the Lord's grace that the loving cows the young boy attended to produced vast volumes of milk, which was more than enough to satisfy everyone's needs, in addition to the great puja the young Visara Sarma was conducting. However, such was the Lord's will, for he wanted to share this young lad's glories with wider humanity, that As Visara Sarma was continuing with his daily routine of looking after the cows and performing the sacred bath and puja of the idol he would make out of the sand nearby, there was a man who was unable to see the true greatness of this young child and paid attention to the mere actions of the boy, before going and sharing with the Brahmins of the town his perspective of what the young Visara Sarma was doing on a daily basis. According to this man who observed Visara Sarma, the young boy who had looked responsible and had taken the responsibility of looking after the cows had deceived them. The Brahmins were shocked and immediately made their way to the home of Visara Sarma to tell his father, Yajadatta, about what they heard, and how he was playfully wasting milk by pouring it on the ground. Visara Sarma's father was shocked and frightened to hear this and replied saying that he had no idea about this and asked them to forgive their sins. And he continued by stating that if his son continues with such deeds as he was his father, he would be held accountable. After the meeting with the town's Brahmins had finished, he completed his evening duties, Sandhya Vandanam, and returned home. He kept thinking and thinking about what the town's Brahmins had just told him, and the negativity the news brought along with it. He chose not to discuss any of it with his son, Visara Sarma, as the father, Yajadatta, wanted to see his son's deeds with his own eyes before taking further action, and so that night passed and the sun rose the next day. The young lad got ready as usual and left to look after the cows. Unknown to him, his father followed him stealthily. Visara Sarma gathered the cows and guided them towards the pastures near the Manni river so they could eat well. At the same time, his father was watching from a nearby tree he had climbed. Still hidden from his son, the young lad, as usual, bathed to purify himself and then built the temple and the Lord's idol from the sand available nearby, before gathering an eye-catching variety of flowers and buds. He then got the pots which the cows lovingly filled with their milk, before placing them neatly and making sure other essential tasks were also accomplished. After all the preparations were made, the young boy began his daily puja for the Lord and uttered great mantras in praise of the Lord, while gently placing beautiful flowers on the Lord's idol and bathing him with the milk gathered in the pots. As his love for the Lord knew no barrier, he became engulfed in ecstasy. At the same time, such was the Lord's will that the young lad's father was unable to see his son's virtuous qualities and only saw the milk being poured into the ground. Thus, the father became enraged and his anger became uncontrollable.